Okay. So today I'm gonna keep on rolling through this. I think is my plan. I say I think because I'm thinking to do. I watched another of the Pendragon ones. So again, since not everybody has access to that because it's a Daily Wire thing, then I feel like I could do a movie. I could do a review on that. So maybe I'll do that since I've done the others. But so I'll skip the song after the joke jump, and then maybe do that. And so let me open up a couple other things here real quick. Like try to get my microphone in the maximally optimal space. So then I'm also going to I'm hoping to get through, try to keep on doing this. I did get some comments yesterday on this, and I just want to say that although this is live stream, I do have an assistant that's basically looking at the comments and trying to get back on the comments. I don't really do the comments myself because kind of like what I was thinking is that, I'm doing practice sessions anyways, and I feel like talking through my practice session helps. So if I can, therefore I might as well. So I might as well do a live stream. Why not? Because I'm going to do it anyways. That's my thought process. And I was thinking, well, I could have the comments, but that's going to kind of throw off my stream of thought to one degree. And I wouldn't really mind that to some degree because I do learn a lot when I'm interacting in a classroom, for example. But it does take a different kind of energy to do that. And I don't want to open myself up to I don't want to get into because there's some people that like to get people into they navigate people into a Jerry Springer style thing and then get you in some kind of personal gotcha moment or what they try to take you down. I don't want to get into that kind of thing or any kind of the trolley stuff, I don't really want to get into that. So what I'm thinking is I do it live, but I don't really do a whole lot of interaction on the live, and I try to have an assistant kind of do that. So why do it live then? Well, because then I don't have to edit it because it's easy. I can then do it live, and then you can see me struggle through it on a daily basis. As this is what I would practice if I wasn't doing it live. Was my thought process, which is what I would love to see some of these other musicians do. How they're thinking, like these jazz guys. I'd love to see them just try to articulate what they're saying, which I'm thinking they probably have trouble doing it because a lot of the people that are really good have found a way not to articulate what they're saying because it's all in their mind, in part because the language is not as efficient as it should be, right? And it's almost made it more into an art form that you can't articulate because we haven't spent the time really refining down the language in a way that's most clear to articulate. If you were to articulate it clearly, I think you'll end up with a lot more virtuosos coming out of nowhere that will learn this stuff like crazy good, really young, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what they're doing, right? That's my prediction. But I mean, anyways, so I just want to touch on that. But I'll try to go into this again. So I'm going to try to visualize this as a lean back chord, and then go into my my other worksheet, so that we could visualize the shifting of the shape as we change it. And so I'll take a look at that as well. So that's the plan. All right, let me try to get a tuner out. Alright, so let's just warm up. I'm going to try to warm up by anchoring something other than my pointer. So when I'm traveling, as I see it, traveling the fretboard, the easiest way is to kind of set your pointer down and build all your chords from that perspective. but so then to build off something, try to do something different, try to use something other finger. So that I'm going to try to navigate with my ring finger maybe, or my pinky finger, and just try to see what can I reach if I anchor with some other finger, right? So if I was like, all right, so if I'm over here and I'm like, I'm in 4 o'clock collection of notes around the key of C, and I put my pinky on is this the collection of notes? No, that's not the right collection. Let's go to this one. We'll go to this one and put my pinky on the D. If my pinky's on the D, then I can reach above it pretty good, right? So I can reach above it like here, boom, boom, and reach back this way or up to the string above it. I can't really get down right below it as easy, but I can get to the next string over. So what can I, so that's going to be like a lean, what if you're anchoring your pinky, you're maximizing, it seems to me I'm maximizing my reach back potential, what I would call a reach back shape, particularly in the upper quadrant, rather than a lean back shape in the lower quadrant, right? So I can see what's in the, that's in the shape, that's in the shape, and then back to here. So this is about as far as I'm going to go, as I'm going to be able to go to here. Right, that's the 3rd fret back. Okay, let's try to go underneath it. So if I go underneath it, I can't really reach this one if I have my pinky, but I can possibly get to here and go back. So now I'm trying to do the open. Pinky's starting to hurt. I need my other glasses. My pinky's weak. Starting to hurt. I don't, that's... Alright, let's try putting my ring finger there then. So if I put my ring finger on that node, so now I'm on that same node and I put my ring finger, then I can reach my pinky behind it here. like one of the comments also said like again that the problem here that I'm doing is that I'm trying to reconstruct. So they're saying, well, the common problem is going to be, well, I've already learned this format, and therefore it's hard to think visually from a modal perspective. And I just want to, that's another thing I might as well just kind of touch on it like real quick. It's like, that's true. And that's the main argument, like, for not shifting that actually makes sense, right? Because the only other arguments that make sense are kind of not really arguments, because you can't really argue that the system is better the way it currently is, or it shouldn't be updated. But it does make sense that you can say, well, all of the old stuff was using, this particular system. That's what we've been using. And most people have learned that in the current pipeline. That makes sense. That's why nothing has changed, because all the textbooks are that way, and that's the way, but at this point in time, that I still think that will not hold, because now you've got ChatGPT. Like it's like saying that like you're going to do something that doesn't quite work before the printing press came out, and then the printing press came out, and people read it and they're like, hey, wait a sec, this ain't the best way to do it, right? Same thing is happening here, right? So you could say all the old stuff is using this language, and therefore we have to keep it, or else we'll lose the essence. But no, it's not even a language like this stuff. This stuff isn't even exactly a language, right? Like you could say plane's like a language, it's a feeling and whatnot, but the actual writing of it is code. It's one-for-one translation. You're not translating Latin to English where you lose stuff in the translation. If you're translating the way you write down music to a different way, it's a one-to-one you don't lose anything in the translation. It's not even like language, right? So it's like there's no way that if something is more efficient, that's not going to take hold at some point. That's my prediction. There's no frickin' way, because you can translate one-to-one anytime you want, right? So it doesn't even, that's the art. And so that means that, you can argue that I've learned this approach, but that approach, if that approach isn't the most efficient approach, then you don't really have the argument to teach anybody else that. I mean, you don't really have the argument to stop young people from learning a more efficient approach that would help them better, right? And it would help me, but like I learned that approach too, and so that's why I just think it's interesting if there's and I know I'm more like, I'm an accountant, so I'm more, maybe I like working with the Excel worksheets and stuff, so I think it's interesting, but I think you can, if you know music as it is right now, then you can more easily learn it like this way. That's why I'm trying to bridge it. And I think you're in an opportunity. It's that way, because then you could show that difference if you wanted to, right? You can actually show like why that might, like what kind of things, where is there faults in the current system? There's a lot. There's a lot of faults. There's a lot of problems, because it's not the most efficient way to do it, So, I mean, I kind of feel like so that's what I was thinking on that. But I'm trying to explain it so I can bridge the gap in my mind as well. So I can kind of think of it as though it's everything's rotating, because I think that's the most efficient way for me to learn it. I think it's the funnest thing to do. I think it's what we should be teaching the youngsters. And so I think it's, that's my argument on that bit. Anyway, for what it is. let's try a quick joke break, and then and then instead of the song, I'll do my my Merlin review. All right, quick joke. Let's see. It's just a stupid joke today. I don't think it's extremely political, but maybe it is. I don't know. I can't remember. I went out last night and purchased a $20 sugar-free drink. Sugar-free drink. Which I feel like was false advertising, you know? False advertising, because although the sugar part of the drink was apparently free, I don't think they included any. My sugar-free drink didn't have any sugar in it, which made the drink taste terrible. Look, if I'm already paying $20 for a sugar-free drink, we may as well tack on another $10 and put some actual sugar in there, you know? I'm not trying to refinance my body. I'm trying to enjoy a beverage. And even if they did sneak some tasty sugar in the sugar-free drink, how exactly am I supposed to believe that the sugar part of the drink was free? You know what I mean? How is that supposed to happen? Money is fungible. Are you telling me that my $20 drink paid for the cup, the ice, the bartender's mustache wax, the ambient lighting, the reclaimed wood, the artisanal napkins, and the only thing that my $20 didn't pay for was the delicious part? That being, of course, the sugar, because it was sugar-free? That stupid, sneaky advertising, man. So the structure that holds the sugar costs money. The whole thing that is there for the purpose of containing the sugar is the part that costs the money. But no, the sugar's free. The sugar's free. Yeah, right. You know, what is this, governmental fund accounting at the bar? This is ridiculous. Oh no, sir, your payment was allocated to the beverage infrastructure. Sweetness falls under a separate restricted fund. Yeah, whatever. You can play all the games you want. It's a bunch of crap. Restricted by who? Taste? I don't buy any of your funds. You're wasting all my money. So it's like, no, this is ridiculous. Anyway. That's my joke. Because it's sugar-free, you know? As though they gave you sugar, but they're giving you the sugar part for free. Get it? Because it's sugar-free. Anyway. I'm going to say, let's try the Pendragon. Okay, Pendragon. So again, nobody has any access to the Daily Wire. So I don't think they're going to do any more. It does seem like they strained themselves. I would think the co-owners would be a little upset, you know, when one guy is running around the world, you know, in Europe. It seems kind of fun. It's like a tax preparer partnering up with the partner who's like the guy that brings in the new clients, and the guy that brings in the new client partner is out schmoozing and boozing all over the freaking place, and the other guy's grinding out tax returns. And you're like, dude, I don't know if this is a fair deal. I feel like I'm not getting a fair shake on. Anyway, but I thought they did a pretty good job. So I'm on this one now. So, you know, it wasn't like, I'm not saying it's like, but you know, it's within the genre I like. And so I think so my basic critique now, we've got, what's the thing now? So now you've got, like, the guy that wrote the books, I think is a kind of a Christian writer that pulled in the Merlin story. So I keep on trying to look. I'm probably overlooking for like the themes of like historical and then the Christian themes. But I think he totally puts them in there because the guy that writes the book is that's like his thing, I think, right? I haven't read a lot of his stuff. So, but I think that's kind of interesting. So we're at the time period where you've got the Romans. I think they've become Christianized. They took over part of Britain where you got like the Celtish kind of Britons, which from my interpretation, again, I'm an American, you know, I've got Anglo-Saxon blood as far as I can tell, but I don't really know I don't even know. But we certainly didn't learn the history too much in school, so I'm kind of trying to piece it together here. And I'm not even sure if I got. I'm an American mutt, but I think I got some Anglo-Saxon. But anyway, so I'm trying to learn. So I feel like I'm trying to figure it out. Like, so the Romans, went into the borderlands were in part of England, and then they had to pull back, and so they left, particularly that part that they took over, vulnerable to the Germanic tribes, which are the Saxons, who are like the bad tribe, and this one is the Saxons are coming in, and then of course all of the I think they're more the Britons, the more Celtic kind of Briton guys are going, we have to unite the clans or whatever, because they have all these different kings, and so they have to get together and try to fight off the invasion. I think that's the basic idea, and so I think that's I think that kind of mirrors if you look at the biblical narrative as though it keeps on going around in a cycle, it seems like that kind of mirrors the idea of you've got the Exodus, and then you've got the Judges, and the Judges, they don't have any king, so they're kind of living, more freely, but then they start doing stupid stuff, right? And so then they want to have a king so that the king can consolidate things and stop all the stupid stuff. So then they go into the period of a king, and then at some point in time, the kings, because once you consolidate power, corruption's going to happen eventually, you would think, and then corruption happens, and you get this separation and all that kind of stuff, which I would think you can apply that narrative to any kind of cycle. So in Britain, I would think you can kind of apply that to say, well, the Celtic guys were kind of under the protection of the Roman Empire, and then when Rome pulled out, then now they have these separate kingdoms that don't have any real centralization, but they have to centralize in order to stop the brutality of the invasions. And so then you would think that they're going to form, a kingdom, and then of course the kingdom's going to be too centralized at some point in time and get corrupt, and then you end up with hopefully like a parliament system. And now, so that's a kind of a break in the story, because now hopefully the parliament system kind of fixes the loop, maybe for at least a little bit longer period of time. I don't know. So, but that's going to be the idea, and so this one, I think then this one starts off with the Merlin guy. I think the Merlin guy. I'm not a real critique of actors, but I think the Merlin guy was pretty good. He's like the center of the story. I feel like him and his sidekick do a pretty good job. Although it might be a little bit easier for his role because he's kind of like a stoic guy, so it doesn't really show a lot of emotion. You really just want a guy that's got he's got a pretty striking face structure in his eye, and he's got pretty big eyes that they can put the contact lenses in, because his eyes are supposed to be yellow because they're like eagle eyes, So I feel like he's kind of, he has a fairly commanding presence, which you're supposed to kind of have as he stands there and goes, I'm like the Merlin, when he does his thing. So I think he's pretty good. And I think the people that like he deals with, which are all like the feuding kings, are pretty good. Like I think those guys seem like pretty good like actors, right? They do a pretty good job of like they're playing their part of like conniving, or like they're jealous of the other king, or now Merlin's coming in and they're mad at Merlin. So I think those guys they seem like they play their part pretty good on it. I think the stiffest actors in it are actually now that I look at it, I'm not like, again, I've watched like Keanu Reeves go through like the bank robbing movie, and then he did pretty good on the Mage. I always point him out because he doesn't look like he's the best actor, but he's still kind of like, you still kind of pull it, like you said, like lines come out and you're just like, oh my goodness, man, why didn't they reshoot that? They probably but at the same time, like it still kind of works. Like when he has a vengeance against his dog, it's like, I guess the whole plot doesn't really call for, there's something that seems to work, even though that guy, just his line, like he I think the part of it is the fact that he tries so hard. He puts the effort in, So you got to give it to him on that, even though it's like it doesn't seem to quite. But somehow within the, so I'm not like being overly picky, but I feel like the two brothers, which are like that are going to be the kings. This younger one is the father of Arthur, And then the older one is his brother, who's going to be the king first. I feel like they're a little stiff. You know, they're young actors. Fairly young for act. I don't know. So, but so you know they're all right. You know but I still feel like I don't know but that but they look the part. Like I think they look the part because I think the idea was that those two guys are kind of blending because now the Romans came in, were taken over for a bit, and so like you would think that some of the power was linked to Rome, but now Rome has left, which is leaving part of the problem. And I think the kids are supposed to be partially Roman, so like they're half Roman and half like Celtish, like British, I think, and they kind of look the part because the older brother looks more Roman, I guess, like kind of Italian maybe, like and he has the Roman garb on and whatnot. So I think he acts, and then the younger brother is like looks a little bit more Celtish, right? He's got a little bit more possibly, and he doesn't seem like he doesn't wear his uniform quite as like Romany, right? I don't know. That's what I get out of it, right? So and then like and that kind of makes sense because I think the older brother from the story it seems like he's supposed to like do better at the noble level, right? Meaning the kings. He talks to the kings and the high, and he sees the big picture pretty good and tries to maneuver on the level of the aristocrats and whatnot to try to line them up. And he sees all the angles and all their concerns and whatnot, and he deals with that pretty well. And that seems like a more Roman thing to me, level-headed kind of planning things out and stuff. And then the younger brother seems to be, they're trying to make him more of like the hothead that has the passion. He's got the heart, and he's going to be more like cool with the troops. You know, he likes to go out and make sure he's good at the morale of the troops and whatnot, and sees their issues more than the aristocrats. He doesn't really get along with the aristocrats as much, which I think is more of a Celtish possibly thing that might be doesn't really like the authority thing much maybe, but so that's what I'm thinking that's what those two are kind of trying to represent. But I don't know, but so they look the part really good. They're strong and whatnot, and I feel like that kind of works. But like I still feel like the chemistry between them isn't. I don't think they're as good of the actors as maybe the other kings and whatnot. But the other kings and whatnot couldn't be these two guys because they're all old guys doing the act. You know, they don't look the part, right? So these two guys look definitely. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being over. So that's going to be them on that one. And it started out kind of in an interesting scene where young Merlin was on, like the old Celtic guys were rolling in and they were mad at Merlin's teacher because they think he converted to like Christianity or the new God versus the old God. Now, the thing that I thought was funny about that scene is that like they could have played it off because again, you're repeating like the kind of Bible narrative. If you were to repeat the Bible narrative, you would think they would make the Celtics as though they were the like bad pagans, right? Kind of Baal worshipers or whatever. But no, the Baal worshipers are clearly like the cow guys from the first episode. That's like the evil one that's I'm think supposed to symbolize like child sacrifice and drinking blood and that kind of stuff. But they don't really do that with the Celtics. So it's like kind of like because the Celtics come in. I was trying to line this up. Again, maybe I'm overthinking it, but the Celtics seem like they're the more earthy God thing. They could have gone either way, because it seems to me there might have been. I think there's debate as to whether there's child sacrifice in the old Celtic religions. I don't know. I don't want to. So they could have kind of played. They could have, but obviously they don't want to. So it seems like they're kind of mirroring, like the Celtics are like the old. It's almost like it's mirroring the old, like. Well, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't know. It was a weird. It was a kind of a. I don't want to get in it. It was a pretty interesting scene though. So you had, that was the start of it, and then again, obviously the Saxons are coming in, and they're trying to unite the clans on the British to try to fend off the invasion, and they portray, of course, the Saxon horde leader as the bad guy. So he's overly, cruel or whatever, and he's drinking blood as a part of a ritual, which obviously from a Jewish perspective is like really bad, right? That's like, that's the bad symbol. It's like Indiana Jones when they pour the blood out of the skull into Indy. No, it's bad, Indy. Don't drink it. I know it's bad. Little short neck, whatever. I can see it. That's why I'm trying not to drink it, can't you? But short round, I can see that. I can see it by the skull they poured it in. So that one was. So now they had and then they have this duel over who's going to be king and whatnot, which was over the top and kind of stupid because I would think, what? But that's typical thing, because you would think after the duel both of them would be dead, because there's no way that those injuries didn't get dysentery at that time. I would think, but maybe I don't know. Stick a hot iron in the leg that got a sword shaft through it, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Maybe they'll put some the magic. If they put some magic in there, I'll believe it. I don't think they. Otherwise, I think they'd both be dead. But, anyways, so that's kind of the thing. It's all right. That's my review. I don't know. Okay. Let's go back to here. All right. Okay. So let's go back to this one. So, let's see. Okay. So we're on the collection of notes around the key of C, 4 o'clock from my terminology, and I'm on the 5th fret, 3rd string down from the ceiling. And so I'm going to call that the star of G, because from the constellation, my finger's on it from up above the planet, and then I'm going to rotate the planet underneath it. I'm doing what I call a lean back chord, meaning I'm defining it by where the second modal half step or 3rd scale degree is. That happens to be this node. So if this is the Mixolydian G, then this is the second modal half step or 3rd scale degree of it. And because it's in the lean back quadrant, I'm calling this a lean back chord. Now, of course, if I added, just for context, if I added the bar chord, this one up top, what would I call that? Now there's 2 roots. Well, I would say this is no longer the root. The lowest note is the root, so I would call that then a lean forward chord from the top string, which would be an E shape, an E bar chord. But if I remove the top and I mute it, I'm going to call that a lean back shape, because now the root basically is here, right? So that's what I'm trying to get a system where I can name it like that. So we have a lean back shape. Okay. So that means that the nodal point number 7, which is Dorian, is always the first modal whole step, second modal half step. So the first modal whole step means every other note in the collection of notes. There's only 7 nodes. So the first modal whole step means 5, 6, 7, mean 2 modal half steps. And then if it's 2 modal half steps plus 1 is the scale degree, because the scale degrees are all off by 1, because to do the scale degree, I would have had to made this G 1, right? But I don't want to make the G 1, right? Because I want to measure from the G like a normal plumber would measure something, not like I don't know, someone in the 1700s would measure something, you know? So I don't know how they measured things back then, but it doesn't seem like they were doing it right. But so that means so that's always there, and that means that the fifth, the one that we were focused on last time, was the fifth, which is here or up top, is going to be Dorian. So Dorian, nodal point number 2, is always the second modal whole step, because it's 5, 6, 7. Second modal whole step. Second modal whole step, fourth modal half step, because it's 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, right? Fourth modal half step. And then plus 1 would be the fifth scale degree. Now, the second modal whole step, fourth modal half step, fifth scale degree of any node is 7 notes away, meaning it's a long distance, or you could call it a major distance or a perfect distance, as opposed to a short distance, except if you go from the Locrian. The Locrian has a short second modal whole step, fourth modal half step, fifth scale degree. It's the only one that does. Everyone else has a long, which is defined as 7 notes away, which you can count by 5 notes between the strings, 5, 10 as we cross the fault line, 9, 8, 7. 7 notes away. Okay, so that's going to be our shape. We're leaning back. If we leaned forward, I'm going to define the shape first by leaning forward so that I don't have to have 10 shapes, and then know from that context what the lean back shape is. So if I lean forward from that G node, I'm in what I would call shape number 1, the Aeolian shape or the Ionian G shape. If I lean back from this node, then of course I'm leaning back into what I would call shape number 5, which would be, you could call it the Mixolydian shape or the Ionian A shape. So we're leaning back into that shape, the Ionian, right, as I play this chord. Okay, so now I'm gonna rotate this now. This time I think we did everything except like the Locrian and the Ionian. So let's rotate it to the Locrian this time, right? So I'm playing here and I want to go to crazy Locrian. So the easiest way to do it is on the same string. So if this G is nodal point 5, then where is Locrian? Well, it's 2 modal half steps up. 2 modal half steps up is 1 off of the scale degree, so that would be the third scale degree. And we know that a Mixolydian 2 modal half step or third scale degree has a long distance, meaning a major distance, meaning 4 notes away, which you can see by formula because it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So it was whole, whole, half, and then whole. So I'm right here, whole, whole, right? It's 2 wholes, meaning 2 plus 2 is 4, right? So that's going to be here. So the easiest thing is to, well, look at that node. Where's that node? That node in this collection of notes, and the collection of notes at 4 o'clock, is any time where the third string down from the ceiling is a Locrian. We are leaning forward. I should do the lean forward shape. We're leaning forward into shape number 3, right? Leaning, which you might call the Dorian shape or the Ionian D shape. So let's pull that. Let's imagine that I'm playing from this node, Mixolydian, as though it's a lean forward. Like so if I was up here, in other words, if I was up here on 9, it would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So if I play that over here, and I just imagine this now is third string down from the ceiling, shape number 3, it would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then I have to account for the kink in the tunings. 5, well, no, I don't, because it's already there, right? 6, 7, boom. Okay, so then that's that. So if I did that, what would happen? I'd move this back 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 ticks counterclockwise, meaning if I have my finger from the star above on the G and I rotate 7 ticks to the left, 4 ticks to the left. So I'm on collection of notes at 4 o'clock. 4 minus 4 would be 0. there is no 0. 0 is equivalent to 12, which is G sharp. So I believe it'd be 12. If I change this to 12, once I hit enter, this shape is going to move back here, and this 7 is going to be right there, right? And also the Ionian node is going to move back to a G right there, right? Boom. So there we have it. Well, did that happen quite right? Yeah. The Ionian moved back not to a G, but to a G sharp. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So there we have it. Now I'll look at the intervals in a second, but just note that now my finger didn't move, but now under my finger I have nodal point 7, Locrian node, which is leaning forward into shape number 3, which you might call the Dorian shape, or from a cage system, Ionian C shape. Kind of an unsatisfying progression. But let's go back. Let's go back to here. Collection of notes around the key. So now let's say, okay, now I'm back to 4 o'clock. Collection of notes around the key of C. And once again, I have my finger 3rd string down from the ceiling, 5th fret, which is a G. And it's a Mixolydian, again, leaning forward into shape number 1, or the Aeolian shape, or the Ionian G shape from a caged system. So now let's imagine that I don't know like this shape, but I know this shape. So I could look at this one from the top string. Now from the top string, I could say, well, that leans back. So I could imagine this is like leaning back here, the same relative position, but I'm going to define it first as a lean forward shape. Otherwise, it's going to get confusing because we'll have 10 shapes instead of only like 7 positions in 5 shapes, right? There's 7 positions in 5 shapes that we can define. Why are there only 5 shapes and 7 positions? Because of the half step. If you have a half step and you cut the fretboard into 5 positions, then wherever that half step is, which is between 7, 1, 3, and 4, Locrian, Ionian, Phrygian, Lydian, then you're going to have one shape of the 5 allocated to where that half step is, right? So that means that this one is shape number 2, I would call it, or you might call it a Locrian / Ionian shape, or an Ionian E shape that I'm leaning forward into. So from here, if I played this up top, I would be on 7th fret, B, right? 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I imagined that I played from this G as though it was the top string of shape number 2, the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape, then I can just fit it here. Say that would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then shift because of the tuning, because I'm going across the fault line, shift to the right, 6, 7, right? Okay, so that's that. Maybe I know it from back. And so what if I count that out? What would be the collection of notes? If I'm at 4 o'clock, what collection would that be? Well, if I go down, if I shift the world down, every time I shift it down, it's equivalent to going to the right 5, because it's in the circle of fourths going down. So you would go down, that would be 5, 10, in clockwise direction, equivalent, and then 10, 9, 8. So it would be equivalent to going clockwise 8 steps, or counterclockwise 12 minus 8, which would be 4, right? And 4 minus 4, once again, is 0, or equivalent to 12 if we're going around the clock. So that would be, so once again, if I make this 12, you can visualize like this 7, instead of this 7 going back to here, I'm visualizing this go down to here and then back to here. It's the same thing. And you might say, well, what happens down here in the kink and the tuning? What's going to happen down here is every time when this shifts down 1, this row right here is going to cross. It's like it's being dipped into the water. If your fretboard, the bottom part was dipped into water. When it dips into the water, it's going to cross the fault line and shift to the right. And then I'm going to go down 2 steps. So again, this is going to end up down here, shifted to the right. This row is going to end up down here, shifted to the right. Everything else will go down directly as though the fretboard bottom part was in water, therefore having a distortion. So I can say, okay, let's bring this to 12. Boom. once again, you can imagine it's shifting down like that. And now here, if my finger is still on the constellation of G, it's now in shape number 3, leaning forward into shape number 3, or the Dorian shape, which you could imagine from the top, from here down, as though it's equivalent to shape number 2, but shape number 2 got distorted when it dipped into the water and shifted to the right after you crossed this fault line, right? So then let's go back to 4, and so that's going to be it. So let's go to let's think about it this way and say, okay, well, what happened to my intervals? They're all screwed up. All of my intervals are screwed up. Look at nothing matches. Why? Because Locrian's crazy. Okay, so what happened? Well, we were on. I still have my finger. My root was on on G Mixolydian, which is what I would call in the long start group or the wide start group, as opposed to the tight start group, or in other words, the major club, which is defined by the second modal half step or third scale degree being the long distance as opposed to the short distance. In other words, a 4-note away major instead of a 3-note away minor. That's this node. So it's going to be 2 modal half steps up. That's what we defined the group by. So now it's going to be 7, 1, 2. So I mean, it should be back here to Dorian. Now that's not like strange for Locrian. That just means it would be part of what I would call the tight start group or the short start group, meaning a minor, meaning it's in the same club as Aeolian, Phrygian, and Dorian. So that's not what makes it weird. What makes it weird is the next bit, which is the 5th. The 5th doesn't line up either, and that's weird. So it's the 4th modal half step or 5th scale degree. So remember, the idea is that if I'm on Mixolydian, the Mixolydian second modal half step, second modal whole step, 4th modal half step, 5th scale degree is long, as is every second modal half step, second modal whole step, 4th modal half step, 5th scale degree, meaning if you go that distance from any node except Locrian, you end up with the long distance as opposed to the short distance, remembering that there's only 2 options. You either have a long 5th or a short 5th. You can call it a perfect 5th if you want. That's the long 5th. What's the short 5th? You can call it a flat 5, diminished 5. It's the short 5. Everybody has a long 5. Except for Locrian, which has a short 5. That's why it's crazy. That's why no one listens to it. Okay? So the short 5 is, so that means short 5 is 4 modal half steps up. So 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 would be back here. So it's Lydian right there. Boom. And Lydian up top if you wanted to play it up there. So that's where Locrian is weird. And that ends up in this tritone, meaning the 6-note distance that becomes a tensiony sound, right? So if I was like here and I played this one, see, there's nothing wrong with this minor. That's normal. But when you throw this one up top, then that's like that sound that in opera would mean that the bad guy came in, right? Now again, that's just a convention, because if you did that in the blues, then that's just the normal sound. you can't really resolve if you add the 5. You almost have to, so if you try to resolve with Mixolydian, you kind of have to lose, the fourth modal half step fifth scale degree, the Locrian fourth modal half step fifth scale degree. Anyway, all right, so let's bring it back and look at it the other way. Let's go back over here and check it out over here. All right, so if I look at it this way, the easier picture to see is like, okay, now I've just got the fretboard. The fretboard represents the constellation in space over the planet, which is the 5 oceans, 7 continents, and it's distorted because the bottom is showing that distortion as it dips into the water, where we have the open E is in the collection at 4 o'clock around the key of C. Open E is Phrygian, open A is Aeolian, open D is Dorian, open G is Mixolydian, open B is Locrian, open E is Phrygian. 5th fret up, if that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3rd string down, that's going to be our finger on the constellation from space, the cosmic star of G. And then it happens to be Mixolydian node. It's on the Mixolydian continent when I'm at 4 o'clock, meaning the 4th degree of rotation in a 12 rotation planet, not 24, but 12 rotations. Okay, so then I want to make it go to this 7. So it's okay. So if I want to make it Locrian, I can see the Locrian up here leaning forward into shape number 3. Therefore, I have to move the planet back under my G finger of 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks back, which will take me to 4 o'clock minus 4 will be 0 o'clock or 12 o'clock, which is going to be the collection of notes of G. That means a G sharp. That means this 1 is also going to go back 4 ticks, which will land it on G sharp. So we're going to go boom, back 4 ticks, and now we have, from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still on a G. My finger hasn't moved. It's 5 frets up, 3 strings down from the ceiling. It's a G, but I went too far. But now, right there, it's the Locrian G. Okay, so that's great. And so that makes sense. So now I'm leaning forward into shape number 3. All right, what if I looked at this Locrian? It's like I know the Locrian up top, that Locrian leaning forward into the Locrian shape, the Locrian/Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape. That means I have to move it down 2 ticks, which is equivalent to 5 to the right for each tick, meaning 10, and then to the left 2 ticks counterclockwise, so 10 minus 2 would be 8. So I could say I could say 8 plus 4 is 8 plus 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is 12. That would be the fastest way to do it. So we could say, okay, down to do it and back here, boom. So there it is. So now I can see from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still on 5th fret up, 3rd string down. It's a G leaning forward from the perspective of the yellow into shape number 3. But I can also see that that's equivalent. I can think of it as though it's the equivalent of thinking of it like as though that node is the top string of shape number 2, as long as I account for the kink in the tuning, which happens right here on the yellow one, right? So I can kind of imagine, it's top string, shape number 2, as I go here to this string, to this string, to this string, and then to this string. And then when I go down to this one, for the yellow, that's the kink in the tuning, where I have to adjust the shape, meaning shift it to the right, which is represented by the shape being shifted to being stuck out here to the left, right? So that's where it gets that's where it's always wonky on the guitar. and that's where we have to accommodate. Okay, what if I looked at it over here and I actually laid the full constellation of stars on top of the planet and flattened it out? So now you've got the planet underneath, the stars are on top, but the constellation we care about is the one cut out by the instrument that we happen to be using. You could cut out any instrument you want, a flute, you could do that, but we're going to cut out the guitar because that's what we're playing. So once again, now I can see open E is nodal point 3, open A is nodal point 6, open D is nodal point 2, open G is nodal point 5, open B is nodal point 7, open E is nodal point 3, and 5 frets up, 3 strings down. I am once again on that G, that's the star above the planet, which at 4 o'clock, meaning as the world turns, is the Mixolydian node leading into the, what you might call Aeolian shape, shape number 1, or the Ionian G shape from a caged perspective. I see my Locrian over here. I want to keep my finger on the star of G, but make that 7 move over this way 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks, which will then put me that 7 here so that G will be a 7 leaning forward into shape number 3, and it'll take that Ionian and put it right there 4 ticks back on G sharp, which means that we're going from 4 o'clock minus 4 ticks back down to 0 o'clock, which is 12 o'clock. All right, so we're going to go boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, there it is. So now we have it. So now from this perspective of the yellow, we're still 5 frets up, 3 strings down. It's still a G. And in that G, now I'm in position number 3. I can see that I'm in the collection of notes at G sharp because that's where the Ionian is, represented by the 1. And I'm leaning forward into this position. Makes perfect sense, right? So then let's go back to here and say, what if I don't know it by that position, but I know it by the top string? Like I know it by this B up top, because that means I'm leaning forward from the top string's perspective around 4 o'clock, collection of notes around the key of C. If I look at the Locrian node, I'm leaning forward into shape number 2, which you might call the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape. So in that case, if I try to make it over here, I'm not going to go diagonal. I'm going to do the coordinates of a dial going down 2 and back down 1, 2, and back 2. So when I go down 2, that's each of those ticks is equivalent to going to the right clockwise 5. So down 2 is equivalent to 2 times 5, or 10, and back 2 is minus 2. 10 minus 2 is 8. So if I'm at 4 o'clock and I go a net direction of 8 clockwise, that would be giving me, once again, 12 o'clock, which is G sharp. So down 2, back here, boom. Okay, so now from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still 5 frets up, 3 strings down. It's still a G. I'm still leaning forward from the perspective of the yellow once again into shape number 3. Same thing, but notice from the perspective of the red, that's telling us that I can kind of see that shape as though it was shape number 2, like as though it was the top string of shape number 2. And as long as I play down as though it was the top string of shape number 2, I would be okay until I hit the kink in the tuning, which is going to be, I would have to go down here 2 strings, and then when I go down to the next string, I would have to shift it to the right, which is represented by the shape being shifted back to the left, right? So that's why that is there. So that's the basic idea. So I feel like that is very useful. I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with that, although, I don't know. Maybe I should spend my time playing the guitar. Well, I will play the guitar when I am darn good and ready. It's my practice session. This is my practice session. Okay. Let's move this back over here. Let's try one more. Let's go to the Ionian. So now let's say we want to shift it to the Ionian. So if I'm back at this perspective, collection of notes around at 4 o'clock around the key of C, and I'm in position number 1, looking at it from a lean forward position. There's my tonic, and I want to switch it from a Mixolydian to an Ionian. Now, again, why would you want to do that contextually? Well, the Mixolydian and Ionian have a difference in the sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree. The Ionian has a long sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree, which you might call a major sixth modal half step seventh scale degree, which is 11 notes away. And the Mixolydian is more similar to what you might call the minors or the tight group, the tight start group, the short start group, because it has a short sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree. So oftentimes, again, if you're playing the blues kind of thing, most people think of it as though they're going from major to minor, which is a little deceptive because it's like, what exactly do you mean by major and minor? Do you mean, you know what I mean? Because it's like, do you mean that you're playing as though you're in the Ionian mode, and then you're flattening the sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree? Is that how you're looking at it? Or are you just using the term major to include all of the major modes, which would be Mixolydian, Ionian, and Phrygian, and basically you're kind of leaning towards playing in Mixolydian because that's the one that has the short sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree. You see, so see why that the blue. See, so if you try to, it's almost like people don't want to define it because it's like they want the magic of it that's coming from not having clarity. But not having clarity is not the magic. The magic is what you're doing, right? It's right. It shouldn't it's like learning a magic trick. I'm still impressed with a magic trick if they have the sleight of hand, even if I know what they're doing, right? If we're teaching the youngsters, you should tell people what you're like, how it's done, you know. And if you kind of use ambiguous language, you're basically doing like the deconstructivist thing in politics, you know. You're just saying stuff that's not exactly right. You're leaving stuff out. That's the feeling I get from it. You're not being fully honest here, and I feel like it's intentional sometimes, not all the time. But I mean, if you were like, well, what does major mean? Well, what I said major, it could have meant that I was talking about like any of the like Mixolydian, Ionian, or Lydian. You just have to like know like from context, man. But I was really like I was talking about like from the major scale, but then I was like flattening the seven because I wanted to do that. Well, doesn't that mean that you're kind of thinking of it like from the perspective of the fifth note, like Mixolydian? Well, you could, like, if you want to think about that way, bro, that'd be cool. But like you know, it's a major could be a lot of things. It depends where you're coming from. Depends where you're like what your perspective is, man. Try to be a little. Just try to help people out a little to explain what exactly are you. I mean, I know it's not like you're trying to be like ambiguous and like vague is like deep. It's like deep, man. If you're vague, it's deep. You don't freaking get it, man. Like if you knew my vibe, if you just knew my vibe, you'd pick up what I'm talking about. Why don't you just say you could? Okay, let's not get upset here. Let's go ahead. So we're gonna. So, anyways, if I'm on nodal point 5, how do I get to nodal point 1? Well, if I go forward, it would be 5, 6, 7, and then around the horn to 1. So it's 3 modal half steps up. We can think of it, right? Because if I'm on nodal point 5, 3 modal half steps would be 1, 2, 3, meaning in terms of the equation, whole, half, whole, half. It'd be whole to Dorian, whole to Lydian, Phrygian, half to Lydian, whole to Mixolydian, whole to Aeolian, whole to Locrian, and then half back around the horn to Ionian, which is going to define the fact that we're talking about 1, 2, 3 modal half steps, which would be equivalent to the fourth scale degree from the Mixolydian, the third modal half step or fourth scale degree, or a Mixolydian third modal half step, Mixolydian fourth scale degree, has a distance, therefore, of 5 notes away, which would be actually a short third modal half step, fourth, and they all have short third modal half steps, fourths, including the Ionian, but they covered it up by calling it perfect when there's really only short and long, because that's the one distance that has a short in it from the major's perspective, but you can't tell because they called it perfect, but really it's the short of the two, right? It's either you have a fourth is either 5 notes away, which is normal, or it's 6 notes away. Who's the only one that has a crazy 6 note away fourth? It's the Lydian, and the Lydian is part of the wide start group, formerly known as the major group. But you can't tell that it has a crazy 6 note away distance in that fourth as easily, because instead of calling it what it is, the weird one, they call it perfect versus augmented. And you're like, augmented? I've never heard that word before. It doesn't ever come up anymore. Yeah, that's because all the distances are long for the major, and then they go short, except for that one, which they covered it up. And I think it's a conspiracy. They covered it up by calling it perfect. So you can't tell that the convention doesn't work right there. But I see you, Lydian. I see you with that 6 note tritone. Try to act like it's not there. Anyway, if I move this one back, so that means if I move this back, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back. So if I'm on 4 o'clock, 4 minus 5 is -1, and 12 minus -1 would be 11. So I think I can make this 11 o'clock then. 11 o'clock, boom. And so when I do that, Ionian pops over here. Let's do that again. 4 o'clock. When I go to 11 o'clock, what's going to happen? This whole shape, because if the third string down is Ionian, once again, I'm leaning forward into shape number 3. So if I make this an 11, this whole thing's going to shift back here. So in other words, if I was to play the shape up here in the 10th fret, I could have it as my second finger, because it's the second shape, because right behind it is the 11th, or the 11th, or is what? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 1. So if I imagine that over here, I'm going to play this as though it's the third string down of shape number 3, or the Dorian shape, or the Ionian D shape would be 1. Let's do it second finger. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, so then if I change this to 11, then this is going to move back, and the Ionian's going to move back to fret 3, which will be a G. 11, boom. So there it is, Ionian's there, and now I'm leaning. If I was to lean forward from this shape, I'm leaning into a Dorian shape, which I would call shape number 3, or from an Ionian's perspective or cage shape, an Ionian C shape. Let's go back to 4 again and say, okay, now I'm back to 4 o'clock. Third string down, fret number 5, third string down from the ceiling is once again, it's still a G, but now it's back to being a Mixolydian. Okay, what if I only know the Ionian node by the top string? So here's the top string. I'm like, I know that shape up here, so I played it up here. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. So that's what I would call that shape is either the Locrian / Ionian shape, or from a caged system, an Ionian E shape, right? Or you might call it shape number 2. So then that means I can kind of think about this G as though it was once again the top string of shape number 2. Remember that this shape is the same shape we just looked at, but we were looking at it before from the first note in the shape, because this shape shares the two notes share the shape. Why? Because that's where the half step is. So then I'm going to say, okay, well, I could say that down here. That's going to be, I could say that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then I have to shift it up because the kink in the tuning happens here. 6, 7, 1. Okay, so now I'm going to say, like, if I see it from this point and I want to make that point, what's really happening? Well, I'm not going diagonally there. That's going to be complicated. I'm going to do it by dial, down 2 over 1, 2, 3. So if I go down 2, that's equivalent to going right 5 times 2, 5, 10. And then I'm going back once again, 1, 2, 3 back. So 10 minus 3 is 7, right? So it's going to go 7. So if I'm on 4 o'clock, 4 plus 7 is 11. So that's going to bring me back to 11. But this time when I visualize it, I want to visualize this whole shape dipping down and then shifting to the left. Instead of it shifting just to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's shifting down 2 and then to the left, 1, 2, 3. Why? Because I can visualize this line. What's going to happen when it crosses the fault line? All the shape's going to shift to the right because of the kink in the tuning. So it's going to end up down here, but shifted to the right. And this line is also going to cross the kink in the tuning. So it's going to shift down 2. It's going to end up right here and shifted to the right. These two lines are not going to cross the kink in the tuning. Therefore, they will shift down perfectly and then left perfectly, right? So let's go to 11 and visualize that in our mind. Boom. Okay, hopefully you saw that happen perfectly. Okay. So then if I look at our shape here, notice there's no change in the shape. There's no change in the shape, even though I'm in a different collection of notes, because if I look at it here, now I'm leaning forward from this node, from this G. I'm now leaning forward into what I would call shape number 3, which would be the Dorian shape, or the Ionian D shape, or shape number 3. But when I lean back into my shape, all my points are in the same spot, no problem. So it still lines up perfectly. Why is that? Well, that is because we haven't added the node that is different between the Mixolydian and the Ionian. What's different? It's the 6th modal half step or 7th scale degree. So in other words, I went from nodal point 5 as the root, which is in the long start or the wide start group, or in other words, the major group, right? Defined by having a long third, right? And then I went to the Ionian, which is also part of the wide start group, the long start group, which also therefore has a long third as opposed to a short third, meaning a major third 4 notes away as opposed to a minor third 3 notes away. But the number changed, and that means that nodal point number 3, Phrygian, is always the Ionian first modal whole step, Ionian second modal half step, Ionian third scale degree, which is a long distance as opposed to a short distance, which means it's a 4 note away distance as opposed to a 3 note away distance. But then the 5 is also good. It didn't move. It's still in the same relative position. Why? Because that's going to be the second modal whole step times 2 fourth modal half step plus 1 fifth scale degree, which always has a distance, which is a long distance instead of a short distance, which we typically call a perfect fifth, except if you measure from the one we saw last time, which is Locrian. So anytime I measure from any node, not major or minor, that's why long or short makes more sense, because the major or minor really only applies to the third, and even then it doesn't really work perfectly because the Locrian is if you define in the club bite. But anyway, if we're on nodal point 7, if we look at and we say, if we're on any node and we count up, 4 modal half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, the colored ones, we end up with a distance of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? Did I say 7 or 5 notes? 7 notes away, except for the crazy Locrian, right? Because if I go 1, 2, 3, 4 modal half steps, which would be fifth scale degree. If that was the 1, you end up with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tritone, crazy 6-note distance, right? So that it's distance that we should be emphasizing here, not these terms, major and minor. They're not helpful unless they're helping you visualize the distance, because that's the thing that really makes the difference. So that we have the same relative shape. That's what I feel like. That's my thought on it. So that means that nodal point 5 Mixolydian is always the Ionian second modal whole step, the Ionian fourth modal half step, the Ionian fifth scale degrees, which has a long distance as opposed to a short distance, which you could call a perfect fifth, which is 7 notes away as opposed to 6 notes away, because no one has a 6-note away difference. No one goes 6. No one goes flat 5. No one goes 6-note distance, and except Locrian. Ruined his career on that one. Started going into conspiracy theories, and just like everybody's like, okay. But then they still listen to him. I don't know. Actually, it helped them out. Boosted his numbers to the moon. Okay, I don't know. I don't understand how. Let's just focus on the fretboard. Let's not get. So then we're over here. So if I say this way, 5th fret up, 3rd string down, 4 o'clock. And then I'm saying, now I want to go to Ionian. Here's an Ionian over here. That means it's going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I keep my finger on the star of G, which happens to be at 4 o'clock in Mixolydian, and then I go 4 ticks back, 1, 2, 3, 5 ticks back, which is going to bring me from 4 o'clock to -1 o'clock. Not really to -1, because it goes down to 0, which is 12 o'clock, and then back to 11 o'clock. Or 4 minus 5 would be -1. There's only 12 ticks. 12 minus 1 would be 11 o'clock. So that means that this 1 is going to go back to 11 o'clock, which is a G. So I'm going to bring this back, boom, and there it is. So now from the perspective of the yellow, I still have my finger on the G from the constellation, but the planet has spun so that now I'm on the continent of Ionian, leaning forward into what I would call shape number 3, the Dorian shape, or from the Ionian's perspective, an Ionian D shape. What if I know it from the top string? I can see back to 4 o'clock. I can see the Ionian up here, 8th fret, and I know it from that position, and I know that if I lean forward, that would be position number 2, which you might call a Locrian / Ionian position, or an Ionian E shape. That means I'm going to move down 2 and then over 1, 2, 3. So if I move down 2, that's equivalent to going to the right 10. 2 times 5, 10. So it's going to be 10 minus 1, 2, 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. If I'm on 4 o'clock plus 7, that would be 11. So we're going to go ba-boom, ba-boom. Okay. So now I can say from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still at the 5th fret up, 3rd string down, which is a G, but I'm once again leaning forward into the Dorian shape, or you might call it the Ionian D shape, or shape number 3. But you can kind of visualize it from the perspective of the red as though it was the top string of shape number 2, as long as you account for the kink and the kink and when you count down. Also note that you could say, well, if I see it as shape number 2, how do I go above it? How do I go above the shape? Well, here's shape number 2. That 7 would line up right under this 7 on the guitar, but it's distorted by the shift in the shape of the guitar as though it's dipped into water. So that relative position here, you can go up at least 1 string without it getting messed up. Meaning if I know this shape at the top of the guitar, then the bottom string is the same, and the string right above it will also be relatively the same. It's the string above that gets messed up because of the kink in the tuning. So I could say, well, if I know this is the top string, I can kind of wrap my mind around the guitar, repeating that on the bottom string, and then look above it. See how this lines up to that? That's 7, 5, 1, 6, 2. This 7, 5, 1, 6, 2, right, lines up above it. So just another way you might be able to kind of visualize it. If I go over here, looking at it this way, now I'm at 4 o'clock again. I've got the full constellation of stars on top of the planet this time, but I'm peeling off the constellation of my particular instrument, which happens to be a guitar. But you could do the same for any instrument. This is not guitar centric. This is not at all guitar centric. Why? Because every musician looks at the circle of fifths. So it makes sense to make a grid, XY axis, right? The notes on one axis, the circle of fifths or fourths, depending on directionality, on the other axis, and map things out. And then you can put any instrument on top of it that you want. The guitar-centric part of it being the fact that this shape is my instrument. Otherwise, it works perfectly. It's not biased towards an instrument. And if you believe it is, I would love to hear the argument, and I will try to fix it because maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think it is at all, in theory. So if I went 5 frets up, 3 strings down, that would be a G. So if I see this shape here, then I can pull this 1 over here, and I'll see that the 1 will shift back. The planet, the continents and oceans will shift back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back to here, so that the star of G that my finger is on will now be on continent number 1, and this Ionian will shift back to a G because we're in 4 o'clock minus 5 ticks to the left, which will be 4 minus 5, -1. 12 minus -1 is 11 o'clock. So let's bring it back. Oh, wait a sec. Right there. Okay, so there it is. So now we're leaning forward into shape number 3. That G that my finger has not moved from is now in the Ionian shape. And now we're in the collection of notes around the key of G, as you can see, because the Ionian is on the G, right? Okay, so let's move it back. Okay, so now let's say I know this shape up top. So now I know this shape right there. So I'm in this collection of notes at 4 o'clock. I know this nodal point up top, leaning forward into shape number 2. This is shape number 2 right here. And I'm like, okay, well, if I imagine this as though it's the top string of shape number 2, that works. Why? Because I can copy that. If I bring this down, every tick down is equivalent to 5 ticks to the right. You can see that because if I bring this Dorian down, then that would be equivalent to 5 ticks this way to that Dorian. So if I bring this down too, that would be equivalent to 10 ticks clockwise. And then I'm bringing it back 1, 2, 3 ticks. So it'd be 10 minus 3 or 7 clicks clockwise net. And that would be plus 4 o'clock plus 7 would be 11 o'clock once again. So we go boom, boom, and boom, boom, boom. And there it is. So now from the perspective of the yellow, we have our finger hasn't moved. It's still on the constellation of G, leaning forward in what I would call shape number 3. But as you can see from the red outline, you can kind of imagine that as though it's the top string of shape number 2, or from the perspective of the Ionian E shape, as long as when you get to the kink in the tuning, you do the shift for the kink in the tuning. All right, that's it. I think I'm getting better at the explanation. Now, like if you can explain that, like I say, I mean, to me, nobody may listen to me, right? I'm used to that, and that's okay. I don't really care if they listen to me or not. I mean, I kind of do. I'm like, everyone kind of likes to be listened to and stuff. But even if no one listens to me, I feel like this is useful to do because I think it's really helping me understand the thing, right? That's what I like. So I feel, so to me, if you want to understand the thing, if this clicks to you at all, then I would, copy the worksheets and do your own thing, and maybe try to explain it, use the YouTubes or whatever, or not, or whatever. I feel like just trying to explain it is one way of learning it. And I think it's a way of learning it that a lot of people aren't really doing, particularly in different art forms, because it's almost like magic. They want to preserve the behind the scenes kind of thing, maybe. I think that might be part of it. But I personally, am not. I don't like that really. So I feel like the more people that just are able to not only play well but define it well, whether you use my language or not, whatever way that you feel that you can define it as well as possible, I think that'll make you better, and it'll make and it might help someone else understand the thing, right? And I think, from my perspective, that the language being used, you have to do something to make the language. I think you're going to find that you'll run into roadblocks if you're really trying to map everything out and explain what you're doing, even if you know it like under your fingers. Like, and if you did that, if you can explain it better, then I think your playing will improve. Like some people, like again, I watch like Rick Beato, for example, and others that they know the chords so well that they know the link. They can kind of see, oh, I can see that this chord is like a Lydian chord or a Mixolydian chord and whatnot, even though the chord name doesn't indicate that at all in the name, right? So it's possible to learn the system so well that you can explain exactly what you're doing from that perspective. But I don't think most people aren't picking it up. Aren't most people are listening to that and just saying, well, that's crazy. It's like he's speaking a different language. I have no idea how he went from that chord to that mode or anything like that, right? Because they don't see the linkage because he spent a whole lot of time developing the linkage. But if you use terminology that has the linkage in the terminology, like you tried to trim down the language to be really specific, then it's like like there was a story in Plato where Plato's basically arguing, it's inherent in anybody to logically be able to understand anything, and his argument was you just have to point it out, right? It's not like I'm doing like, and so he's like the Pythagorean theorem or something. He's like, watch, I could just draw the thing in the sand, and someone else will pick it up, even though they have no idea if you draw it right. And so it seems to me that the art, some types of art, they try intentionally not to draw it right because that preserves the magic. I don't know. I don't like that. No, draw it right, and then because then more people can progress further, and draw it right, draw it specifically, make it